What's up, guys? I'm Josh Pate. That's Steve Wiltfong. It is the weekly Wiltfong recruiting Whiparound. It's game week, Stephen. Coast to coast. They're teeing it up this week. Today, though, as you and I are talking, it's the 1st of September. That means something in the football world. In the recruiting world, though, what exactly is going on right now?
Well, September 1st of a prospect's junior year is the first day that college programs can initiate contact with their top targets. Yes, some of these kids have 30, 40 offers already. Yes, some of these young men were fortunately able to go visit campuses in June and in the last week of July and start building in-person reports and relationships with the schools recruiting them. But everything had to be initiated up until today by the kid and his high school coach. It had to be organized that way. And at midnight, college coaches were able to reach out to these prospects themselves and connect with them in that way. And then also they're able to do that with kids in 2022. Brian Kelly's able to make a phone call, Nick Saban, Ryan Day, they're able to get on the horn with their top targets. And obviously they're sending a lot of edits. I know a lot of people think that this was just a big edit day, but the kids love the edits, and the edits can really sell your program, Josh. You know, if you're a team that just had a lot of players make NFL rosters, you can make an edit out of that and send it to kids. You can obviously make personalized edits of these kids in the gear that they wore when they took visits earlier this summer, and you took pictures of them and stashed them for your edits on September 1st. Schools were able to utilize that and edit. The social media game is super strong in recruiting, and schools are investing in that. But coaches now are also able to go on the road and go to games. On Friday night, I mentioned Brian Kelly. He's expected to go see the number one safety in the country, Xavier Nwankpa, this weekend out in Iowa. But coaches are scattering all over the country to see top recruits this weekend. So as our guy Andrew Ivins tweeted this morning, we're going to see some golf shirts and some logos at high school football games here, which we did not see last year because of the pandemic.
So here's a question I actually got a couple times this week. You know, one of the biggest games of the year is week 1. It's Georgia versus Clemson. Now, it's not in Clemson. It's not at Georgia. So, Steve, there's some confusion out there. Who's allowed to visit? Like, what, from a recruiting standpoint, is allowed to happen at these games after you get done with what I'm sure will be a brilliant answer? Then we got to talk about which team this game is bigger for.
Yeah, so Clemson and Georgia each have an allotment of tickets that they can give to prospects and their families, but they're only allowed to provide tickets. So a prospect isn't going to be able to pregame chat with Kirby Smart or go in the locker room postgame with Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. They can just go to the game and see the pads pop live between these two top 5 teams and what's probably going to be an insane atmosphere, right? But no in-person reaction or no in-person contact at neutral site games is allowed.
Okay, so you and I were talking this week.
But it would be cool if it was, because it'd be funny to watch Dabo Swinney and Kirby Smart fight for time with an AJ Harris. Like, do you stand there and circle your thumbs as you wait for Dabo Swinney to get done talking to a kid if you're Kirby Smart? And if you're Dabo, do you just keep that conversation going as long as possible?
I think
that would be awesome.
Here's how you do it. You take that Duke's Mayo logo, which is 50-yard line, and put every prospect there and just circle them with coaches. And it's kind of a shout fest, kind of like a carnival atmosphere, which, Steve, I've always told you recruiting should be anyway. So, but you and I were talking earlier this week, and we were discussing which team this game's bigger for. Now, everyone else is talking about this purely from a playoff standpoint, I guess. But you mentioned something that kind of swayed me, because I was of the opinion Clemson needs it more because it's going to be tougher for them to have big resume wins to make the playoff if they don't have the Georgia game. But you said something else. You said you need to think about it from a 50,000-foot view instead of a 25,000-foot view. Factor in recruiting. You think Kirby Smart and Georgia need this one more? Why?
I just think that we're at the point of the Kirby Smart era at Georgia where he needs a win like this on his resume to beat Clemson, a perennial national champion contender, would be huge for Georgia and continue to say where their program's at. And Georgia's obviously a national title contender coming into the season. And if they lose this game to Clemson, but bounce back and win every game during the season, play in the SEC title game and make the college football playoff, this game's not going to matter. But we've seen some great Alabama teams not go undefeated in SEC play. And I think Georgia's got to make the college football playoff this year. I just think that it would be so massive for their recruiting if they can get into the college football playoff. And when you look at some of the prospects that are coming to this game, I think that they're looking to see Georgia take that step also this fall. And certainly they've recruited to a national championship level. So seeing it all come together, that's why I think this game is more important for Georgia.
How often do kids talk about that, Steve? Like how often do you get in maybe even an off the record setting, so no specifics, but how often do they say things like, I like this school, not even just Georgia, but schools in general, but if they don't show me something in this season or in this game, it may sway me? Is that a real thing?
Well, I think it's just recruiting is a game of inches. And this is an opportunity for Georgia to show all these top targets. They're in on a lot of blue chip guys right now, that we are exactly what you thought we were going into this ball game.
Right.
And a lot of them are going to be at this game. You start with the number one overall player in the country per the 24/7 Sports Composite, Walter Nolan. Now, some of these recruits that are coming, they have Clemson and Georgia in their top 3 or 4. So they're coming in with a neutral mindset, at least publicly, where there's no question the Nolan family is rooting for Georgia to win this ball game right now. And so it's an opportunity to have a good showing in front of Walter Nolan, his little brother Warren, who they've offered, and mom and dad, and their other brother. And so the whole Nolan family is going to be there. You got LT Lebius Overton, the number one overall player in 2023, who took visits to Georgia and Clemson this summer. And then you have Jaden Davis, the 2024 quarterback, the number one overall player in the top 247. Georgia was first to offer him in 8th grade. We know Coach Sweeney and company, they don't offer players this early, but he lives in South Carolina. I would imagine that Clemson certainly has him on the radar. There's dialogue there. This would be a huge opportunity for Georgia to make a statement in front of Jaden Davis, and the number one prospect in South Carolina, who also happens to be a Peach State native, grew up in Duluth. But so many blue chippers that are going to be there. Andre Green, top 247 receiver, who has Georgia and Clemson in his final 6. He's going to take an official later to Clemson, already been to Georgia. And then Oscar Delp, top 247 tight end, who's trending towards Georgia. Maybe Clemson can make a move with the way they utilize their tight ends in this game, with the decision, I think, coming later this month, perhaps for Oscar Delp. But the 2023 group is loaded as well. Beyond LT Overton, you got running backs Reuben Owens and Justice Haynes, who Georgia's in great position for. Vic Burley's a top 10 overall player in the top 247, who I like Clemson for, but obviously he's from the Atlanta area. Warner Robins. Caleb Downs is the number one safety in the top 247. Georgia and Clemson are near the top of his list. He grew up really kind of liking Clemson before his process started. His uncle's at North Carolina, Dre Bly. Family ties everywhere. Alabama's doing a good job with Caleb Downs, Ohio State, Notre Dame, but Clemson and Georgia certainly with a chance to make an impression there. Same as Monroe Freeling. You have DJ's little brother, Mateo, coming in from California. Ernest Green, top 247 2022 offensive lineman that's high on Georgia, will be there. Eat the Nation. AJ Harris, the 5-star cornerback I mentioned at the top, also high on Georgia and Clemson. I like Clemson for him right now. So a lot of head-to-head recruiting battles between these two teams. But if Clemson loses this game, they still have a big resume to point to over the last 4 or 5 years, where I think Kirby Smart in Georgia is still building their what we've done on the field resume.
Right. All right, before we get out of here, Florida State's got a pretty big weekend this weekend too. What's the latest with the Noles?
Well, the Noles have the number 10 recruiting class in the country. It's number 1 in the ACC. And now they got to start playing some games, right, under second-year coach Mike Norvell and company. And they have a huge opportunity, a Sunday night standalone game against a top 10 team in Notre Dame, coming to town, and a strong showing could go a long way for them. They have 11 official visitors, a lot of them already committed, but some key targets: 5-star receiver Kevin Coleman, who I like Florida State's chances for. They're battling Oregon and some others there, but Kevin Coleman, he was there on June 1, the first day that recruits could visit colleges after this pandemic didn't allow them to for over a year, and Florida State's been in a really good spot for Kevin Coleman for quite some time. Jaleel Skinner is the number 1 tight end in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Crystal ball's on Florida State. I hate that pick now. I used to like it. I hate it. I think Texas is trending there. I think Miami's in the middle of it. I think Florida State's starting to fade a little bit, but we'll see what this visit does. if he makes it to Tallahassee. And then you have Kendrick Law, who they're battling Alabama and LSU for. Nigel Kelly's a former Florida State commit, one of the top pass rushers in the Sunshine State. Florida State's in a good spot, but so is Miami, so is LSU, so is Oregon. So chance to really show him where that defense is going against a good team like Notre Dame. A couple offensive linemen are visiting unofficially too, Josh. There's going to be like 80 to 90 unofficial visitors, I'm told, at this game. Julian Armella and Elijah Pritchett. Julian Armella, they're battling Miami, LSU, Alabama, some others for him. Elijah Pritchett, I think they're basically going head-to-head with Alabama, although Georgia and USC are in there as well. He's going to visit Alabama the following week for the Mercer game. So a chance with Elijah Pritchett coming with his mom and his siblings to this ball game to have another great experience after visiting Tallahassee a few times. Obviously, a bunch of underclassmen. We could talk about this game for days. Head to Knowles 247 and Josh Newberg and those guys to see what 2023s are going to be there. But that list is extremely talented as well.
And head to 247sports.com for all the latest on the national scene. Steve Wiltfong just named about half of the world's population, and they're all in play this weekend. Make sure you enjoy the college football and then check 247sports.com for all the latest recruiting updates. Steven, I will see you next week.